All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is Wednesday, September 7th, 5:35. We're going to call the Property Reuse Committee Evaluation Process public meeting in order. The first order of business is to take a roll call. Councilor McBride is present.
Mr. Welch present.
Bordelon present.
Okay. I'm just going to do a quick review. Tonight's meeting, as everyone knows, the purpose of this meeting, was the council received a draft of the town hall property reevaluation process. I think it was last summer. The mayor and the council, I think it was designated to form a committee. The council, I believe, formed a committee. The mayor chose the three of us to form a committee to review that process that was in draft mode. We've had, I don't know, 6 or 7 various meetings. We've held public meetings, have received substantial comment from the community regarding what we put together. We've taken some comments, not taken some others, came up with a revised draft, which we have posted, which is available, which we were soliciting comments tonight from the public. And the goal would be to continue on, take public comments in addition tonight, as well as in the future. Tonight's meeting is not really a working meeting such as some of the others have been. Tonight's meeting is to receive public comment from anyone and to take those comments into consideration. We've been meeting the first and third Wednesday of every month. We will continue. We will meet September 21st, which is the third Wednesday of the month, and we will then take the comments received today via and others received via email to continue the process with the goal and the objective to provide a revised draft to the council for their review and hopefully approval, so we can move this process along, because there are a couple of schools, as everyone knows, that we want to try to move forward potentially, using this revised process. So I don't have any other comments at this point. Any other counselors want to provide any quick overview comments before we go to the public for their comments?
Go ahead.
Wanted to say this is something that I was really passionate about when I sent the referral forward to the council, post some of the processes that have been in place here. And, much to my surprise, as a counselor who sat a couple of terms, I was not aware that we did not have an actual process fully written out, depicted as to how that process would run and what would be a good mapping system to follow. So I'm really excited about this. Happy to work with both Councilor Westervelt and Councilor McBride on this as a starting guiding board from here. Hoping for some public input and looking forward to pushing this forward in a way and manner which is very transparent, open to the community, opening, allowing dialogue. And I predict that we'll probably have another opportunity as this document progresses along. So the more input, the better. So really excited.
Councilor Westervelt, comments?
No, I.
Okay, thanks. I also want to especially mention and thank Robert Boris from the Economic Development Commission for coming this evening, as well as Hal Zod from the Planning and Zoning Commission. We as a committee really wanted to reach out and make sure those two committees were involved in this process. Now moving forward, so we want to make sure Groton's moving in the right step, in the right direction for everyone involved. And your two committees are extremely important to this process. So we want to make sure you're involved now as well as we continue in the future. So without anything else, what I'll do is I'll move forward to public comment. I did have a listing up there. I believe an individual had signed up, and I know you have another engagement to go to. So if you'd like to start off, that would be great.
Yeah. Tom Olson, 188 Crosswoods Drive. I'm also a member of the Town Conservation Commission. I'll go through a couple of specific comments here and also insert some comments in regard to things that I found in your reevaluation process update here. And the first, in the goals section, item number 1, you talked about conservation development, zoning regulations, and an overall master plan. I'm unfamiliar with an overall master plan, and unless you're developing something like that, that's a future thing. And if it is, you ought to say it's a future item. But there is no, I'm aware of any from the Conservation Commission's in-depth look at things. There's really, we haven't been involved in the overall master plan. The next area, the town-owned properties listing. For full disclosure here, the Conservation Commission has done it over the last year and a half here, has done really a deep dive into an inventory of all town properties to see how they match up with the POCD. And from a result of that, we've got an inventory online working with the GIS folks and on the staff in regard to categorizing each property in the town into one of the four categories. You have open space, dedicated open space, managed open space, facility open space, and then other. Okay, so those are the four categories that in our review, and the town has over 250 parcels. Okay, and we've categorized each parcel into our assessment as far as how the land use is, taking a look at it. And I personally have taken a look at each of the deeds and all this and we've actually matched all that in there. It's all built into that inventory already. So you may want to consider taking a look at that inventory. I can make that available to you. It's still in we're still getting permission from the town manager to release that to the general public, but it is available to the various staff and to the commission here. But the way you set this up, you're asking for somebody to go off and do a lot of research that I don't think is possible today. When you ask things such as contamination levels and all that kind of stuff, I don't think that information is readily available. And you surely don't want to go and take a look at it for all 250 plus parcels. Okay, at this point, when the town's going to clearly keep and be utilizing things, you may want to put a categorization and then put a more detailed maybe a multi-step process in as far as for filling out your spreadsheet. Moving on to the section 1 on decision and disposition of process item paragraph number 1. You asked for a Conservation Commission member. We appreciate that as a member of the Conservation Commission. We've had inputs in the process that was provided to us multiple years ago, and we've seen and had our comments on items that have in the past, and we'd like to see that continues in the future. And so we appreciate that, and I will probably be I'm going to be volunteering for that position if this goes forward. Continuing in that section, in paragraph number 4, I have 2 adds to the last line. You have the recommendations maybe to sell the property, to sell a portion of the property. In the sell a portion of the property, you may want to talk about subdivisions, subdividing the parcel get better clarification of that. And then also putting a potential for a conservation easement on that. So either subdivide or establish a conservation easement as that option, making that available. I don't know, again, from full disclosure here from the Conservation Commission, we're in the process of taking that inventory I talked about earlier and expanding that to add all the conservation easements that are in the town. The town currently, I personally have done research, reviewing all the deeds and the maps to take a look at those. And the town has approximately almost 70 easements that the town holds. There's another 10 conservation easements in the town that are held by other organizations, either the city, GOSA, Avalonia, that type of stuff, or type of activities. And there are some easements that the town, just as you approved last night, that no longer need to be there or that are really technically incorrect, such as you had an easement on the Boulder Heights property. When the town took that over, you didn't get rid of it anymore. You have an invalid easement where the town had an easement from the landowner, but when the town foreclosed on it, you didn't cancel that easement out. So there are some issues that need to be cleaned up in that world, okay? Because you can't have an easement to yourself, which is what you essentially have. And so I've identified some of those issues as you're going, because there's nobody in the town that's tracking easements, okay? You gotta, that's just on the I only look at conservation easements and the other, any recreation such as hiking easements. You have one hiking easement in the town directly across the street from the property from the town dump area there, the transfer station. But those other ones, and we're going to put those all into the inventory so that, at least from the conservation perspective, we'll know what we have and what we should be monitoring that we're not. Okay. So I just point that out to you for your information. And then I think that's on the remainder of this. From a conservation perspective, the disposition process is really not our concern, and we had no real issues with any of the remainder of the document. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Tom. No, I think your feedback was great, and really appreciate your thoughts, because it stimulated some thoughts for me to consider some things. And I wish we had known about, or wish I had known about the listing that you're working on, because that will save us a great amount of time. So I appreciate all your work on Conservation Commission and providing feedback. So
I just want to ask for, I'm just not sure of the format, so I want to make sure I'm staying within the boundaries. Are we able to respond to each citizen if we have a quick clarifying?
yes, of course.
Or do you want us to wait till the whole end just in case people leave? I want to.
No.
I'm going to be leaving.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask. Awesome, thank you. Thank you so much for your input and feedback, and it's very helpful to hear. And I'm really interested about the easement aspect, and very interested in seeing more about the hearing more about that document. I can just speak for myself. Some of the intentions or the conversation that was brought up about the overall master plan, it's not that putting a lot of pressure or work, it was just like as far as brownfield, it was fields that were already identified. If they've already been identified, just having a place where there was a list where a person, a developer, anybody could go to one page. It could be ever evolving, but it'd be an easy way to kind of click or go to and reference if it's already been identified as a brownfield. So, but again, thank you. I look forward to working with you, and I'm sure I would love to get some more information from you in time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We have a few residents who would like to speak online, but I wanted to afford you the opportunity. Would either of you two like to take the time now to speak on any matters?
I got a head start on this, so I'm
Yeah, you were the president last time.
I'll have a couple more. Why don't we let the residents go first, and you can respond.
Good with that?
That's good.
Okay, we have actually Councilor Baumgartner is on. Councilor Baumgartner, can you hear me? Your microphone is muted. Councilor Baumgartner,
Yes, can you hear me?
thank you.
Can you see me?
See your
We
picture.
we see your picture. Great
All
picture.
right, there doesn't seem to be an option to turn on the camera, so I apologize. All right.
Really, the camera's an option. You just go ahead.
Okay, all right. My apologies, Chair McBride. Good to see you all, and just want to commend the committee for your hard work over the last few months, deliberating on a topic that has consumed a considerable amount of the council's time over the last few years, especially as we've deliberated on how we intend to reuse several key parcels within our communities. I do want to note that obviously, our town has been hard at work identifying the right uses for each of our, in particular, our new schools. I would note in my lifetime, however, we have yet to, cut a ribbon for any school that has been properly disposed of. Obviously, we've signed, many agreements and sales agreements with various developers in town, but we have not yet cut a ribbon for any of the apartment buildings, and so I very much welcome that time when we finally have the chance to. But I do think in the future, our town ought to have a process in place where we can, should we dispose of properties and have identified a use that is supported by the community, that we can convert the property as or get handed over to someone who can make use of the property and develop it as soon as possible. So Obviously, there are a lot of moving parts to that, but I do hope, when we do dispose of properties or have identified a property to dispose of, that we can get that done in a quicker manner. As was mentioned, I think it's important to factor in some of our conservation needs in our community. There's the Conservation Commission was hard at work in the last couple of years, developing a blueprint for how we manage our open spaces. Creating an inventory, working with our town GIS to highlight and showcase the properties that the Conservation Commission has identified as properties that ought to be protected in perpetuity. So that's an area that I think that obviously should be prioritized as well. That any properties that may have are exclusively tree frontage or has are forested and very expensive to develop, that we can place conservation easements on those properties as well. And lastly, we do have, I think, as a council, varying viewpoints as to how certain properties ought to be developed, and kind of just creating a score sheet, so that the community inputs are what takes, or are really what informs the council decision making, as opposed to certain councilors that may come and go over a period of time, and ensuring that the community's perspective is weighed most heavily during property disposition. But I've read your work so far. I appreciate your tenacity, and again your willingness to work together, and it certainly shows in your work product so far. So keep up the great work, team, and I'll see you on our next council meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman McGardner. Any comments, responses?
Thank you.
Okay, next, I did receive an email today, so I'm just going to read this for the record. This was sent to us by Robert Welt, who called the office to add a few corrections to the final draft. First page, goal 1, parens, town's long-term strategic plans, end parens. Third page, disposition of non-town owned property process. The first sentence should read parens, town partners. And the fourth page, number 4, sixth sentence, parens, a set of preferred parameters. So we'll take that into consideration as well. Thank you, Robert. Next on the list, we have a Robert Frink. Robert, I'm promoting you to speak. If you can jump on.
Okay. Can you hear me?
There. Yes,
Can
we
you hear me?
Yes.
All righty, thank you. Okay, so I'm speaking as on behalf of my position as the chair of the Groton Housing Authority. And in going through your document, I didn't see that housing was mentioned anywhere as a potential user of, let's say, surplus town land. And I'd like to suggest that land for housing is as vital to us as it is to open space, sports fields, and whatever else. Particularly affordable housing these days. So I've further asked that the GHA, the Housing Authority, be recognized as a housing advocate for the use of surplus town land in your document. I will go through some line by line suggestions here, but that's my overall thrust for tonight. Under goals, paragraph 2, I would like you to consider adding or exchanging or doing ever using the words inclusive and consistent. For under goals, a new item 5. Recognize and seek to satisfy the need for property for housing. that is, recognize and seek to satisfy the need for property for housing. While I'm here, I'll just make a quick comment on number 5. When you talk about preserve the character, character is a code word that is used at times to oppose affordable housing, that it doesn't fit the character of one thing or another. So please be aware of that. And character can be the architectural character of a buildings that, yes, you might want a structure to fit in, but character can also be other attributes like, is Groton a family-friendly town? Is that part of our character that we're talking about? Okay, I gotta scroll down here. Whoops. There we go. Hold it. All right, so under decision on disposition of town-owned property process, paragraph 1, I'm asking that you add to the members, the TOP committee, a representative of the Groton Housing Authority. Now, having said that, you need to look at the charter, section 3.5.2, that I think forbids people to be on 2 ABCs. It would be unprecedented, I think, in town for especially town council members. Check that, it's paragraph 3.5.2 in the charter, holding dual positions. Okay, under 2, under the same section, you've got ABC. I would ask for a new item D. Is the property suitable for housing? Under H, add in there, you've got Planning and Zoning, Inland Wetlands Conservation Commission, add in the Groton Housing Authority, so that we're at the table. And under 1, under that H1, what are the current applicable zoning, wetland, and then housing potential or economic classifications of the property? Okay, further down, I skipped now down to 4. Yeah, 4. And at the report, the TOP report should describe how their decision satisfies or comports with the town policy on the reuse of the property. You know, not that they just decided to do something with it, but how does that satisfy your policy on these matters, on the use of town land? Some people, use the highest and best use. I think that's a planning and zoning term. Another one you might consider is what satisfies the greater good? Certainly subjective, but that's used. Okay, I think, okay, on disposition of town-owned property process, paragraph 2. You got a lot of people looking at a proposal. And my experience is proposals can include proprietary information. So I don't know how you keep that confidential with different folks being aware of what's in a proposal. Okay, that is that. Now I have a couple of final comments. I've never seen one of these done without a flow chart. I hope that at some point you'll have a flow chart. So if I come in and say, I've got a great idea for Cloydchester School, where do I go? What do I do? How do I know when I'm finished? And finally, you spoke earlier in some of your earlier meetings about talking to other communities. So I'm asking if you did benchmark other communities on this document. It would be a shame. Well, I think it's really important to do that. Let me say that, That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. That was some great information. We will definitely take that into consideration. We know the importance of affordable housing, so we're going to bring that back and we'll review it. And I certainly liked your idea of a flow chart. I think that makes a tremendous amount of sense. So appreciate the comments, and I know I will take them seriously into the next draft. Not sure if anyone else, any other councilors have any comments?
I just wanted to say, thank you for, your input, on the document. I think a flow chart would be interesting to kind of construct. I like adding, Groton Housing Authority as an option on the document, obviously to be considered. And also in the area of people around the table, I'm not sure how that would look. I mean, this is our first run at this, but I guess what I was hearing from the community is before it becomes, confidential or it's wrapped in, that when we go out to an RFP, what are we really wanting to go out RFP for? Most times as a counselor, for me anyway, it was already kind of defined and then we kind of went along with the process. This document, in my words, or how I'm trying to wrap on how to word it, I was hoping that if there's a town-owned property that we wanted to kind of set off to be for sale, that we kind of have a vision like affordable housing. So when we guide our town to write for that RFP or whatever, we would be instructing or guiding in a way that fits our vision of what we want in the town, way before the developers around the table. But I appreciate all your comments, and I just wanted to be as inclusive as possible and make sure that what does that document look like when that preferred developer is decided, who's deciding, how many applicants are in the final, and so I do appreciate it. I look forward to working with you.
Okay, next on the participant list, we have Ian Thomas. Ian, you should be promoted.
Yes, can you, hold on a sec.
We can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. So yeah, I just, sorry, I'll be brief, but I just want to express my support for this committee's mission, and I appreciate all the work that everyone's done so far. I think we're on a great path. I was particularly interested in the meeting from last week when the Planning and Zoning Commissioner Hal Zod mentioned like how this sort of cross-committee collaboration could be a model to build upon to also further streamline development and other projects in town. So I would just encourage everyone to kind of keep moving forward in a positive fashion, and I look forward to seeing the results. And I guess if there's any chance of doing some kind of, I'm not sure what the process would be in this regard, but if there's a public hearing, that this document could get kind of, whenever the committee's comfortable with the document, after getting all the other input from other committees and other people, putting the document out there for an actual full public hearing and kind of, getting right into it. I think that could be a great way to vet the document in a more thorough fashion as well, moving forward. So that being that, thank you all and carry on.
Okay, thank you, Ian. We'll definitely take your comments, and regarding the public hearing, that's something, I'm not sure if we consider that or if that's something the town council considers, but we'll certainly investigate that.
I have no comment to that. I just wanted to say, for Robert Frank, if anybody that is still here has any of their edits and they want to email them, that way, just in case we miss something in our handwriting here, I will go rewatch the video, but it'd be great if anybody could submit any of their suggestions that were stated here tonight. It'd be really helpful. So thank you.
Good point. Okay, that's everyone we have online.
Oh, no, me. Me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see Scott there. I apologize. So Scott Westerveld online, but he's here. So Roseanne is named Scott. So Roseanne, are you,
No.
you're on, you're unmuted. So you're ready to roll.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I want to echo that same sentiment that I really appreciate the work of the committee. I was under the impression when you first got started that you may have residents on this committee. So that's one of my questions. Going through the document, oh, not now. Going through
Alan Casper.
going through the document, under goals, I also, the character and sense of place of town kind of jumped out at me as well. I really believe that this needs to be defined by the residents and not town staff. And I think this is important because we recently just saw 3 projects cheerleaded by town staff that were rejected by the local communities. So it's back to, you know, what kind of town do we want to be? Do we want to be a town of single family dwellings, apartment dwellings, or both? I vote both. I don't necessarily believe with the planning department goals they're pushing on us of the live, work, play. I don't agree with that. I think 40,000 is a nice number for this town. I don't want to expand the population. It just means expanding the government. So I think that needs to be defined a little bit more. And then number 6, also grow the town's grand list. If that's going to be a goal, then would that leave out parks, for instance? Anyways, and I also want to comment that I agree with Bob Frank's comment regarding the dual positions for the town council. So over to number 4, where it says the commissioners from the other various committees, commissions will be ex officio members. I don't think they need to be. I think that they just need to be members. And then on the next page, it looks like for each property, are you proposing 2 temporary committees? The first committee is as defined in number 4, okay? And then the second committee seems to show up on number 2. So are the 3 residents that are included in the committee described in number 4 the same as the 3 residents described in the committee on number 2? And then right after that, number 3, I wondered why it said any recommendations issued will be forwarded by staff. I don't understand that, to the town council. And number 5, following RTM approval, just playing devil's advocate here, what if the RTM says no? Which could have happened last time, you know, with a few projects that staff brought forward. And I don't understand number 7. And I believe that it undermines the whole process. So those are my comments, and I really want to thank you all for listening and letting me comment. I really appreciate it. And again, I'm going to be supporting this document. Hopefully it's going to make the changes that we heard tonight. And I also agree with what Bob Frink said about including the Groton Housing Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Roseanne. We'll take your comments as well. Just one comment on the 2 committees. We may need to refine some of this because I think at one point we did have 2 committees, and that's why it may appear to be 2 separate committees. But I think as it stands now, and jump in any other counselors, that our thought was to maintain it as 1 committee. So when
Gotcha.
you're seeing some repetition like that, I think it's the intent is to only have 1 committee. But it came at one point we had 2 committees, so that's why it's coming across that way. So we will tighten that up if the committee determines to continue with one committee, not 2 separate ones.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
No, I just wanted to thank Roseanne for her comments, and I can agree with Counselor McBride that I think this was just like a bunch of ideas. It was three of us kind of throwing everything in, and teasing it out with time. This is our first real kind of chop at it. So I can agree with Counselor McBride that it was kind of a bunch of ideas originally that were started to refine. And I think as we reread the document in our last meeting, my understanding is that we were kind of realizing that we're naming two and wanting to narrow down to one. So thank you for that. And as far as adding some residents, I definitely think that that is something that the next step should be post, this meeting would be talk to, how we should add some residents input as to be part of this document, which again, I think is the most important piece of this. And also I'd like to see a way that we're including when looking at development in certain areas, residents that are affected in that neighborhood. So it'd be ever evolving. If a piece of property on one side of town came up off of Pearl Street, we'd look to seek this group, not me, but this group would seek some residents in that area. So include them early now in the document, include them in the process when land is being up for sale or being developed. So, but thank you for all your comments.
Do you want to ask Bob if he had another comment?
Bob Frank, your hand is up. Do you have another comment, or was that from previously? Not sure.
Think so.
Okay, we don't have anyone else on Zoom, but we have a few residents here that came. Do you have anything you'd like to speak? No? Okay. Genevieve, I know you were online.
I was on Zoom, but I'm here now. Yeah, I just want to say a couple of things. For one thing, I think you've done a fantastic job here.
Could you just come close? I just want to make sure if they
The
hear.
mic is here.
I think this is a 10-foot radius. So I wanna
Yeah,
make
if you
sure.
stand up there, that way.
Okay. I can walk there.
You want me to get your seat out here?
Right here
Yeah, we pulled the seat for you.
or here?
He's got a seat for you right there, right here.
Oh. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think you've done a tremendous job. I've listened in occasionally on some of your meetings. It really looked like you did more work than practically any committee I've ever seen. So I really appreciate what you've done. You've done a fantastic job on a very, very important topic. I haven't read the whole thing. I'm going to, and I'll submit whatever edits. But the main thing is I happened to come into the meeting just as Bob Frank was starting to speak. And I realized that one of the things that we're really lacking in this town is people always moaning and groaning about it is housing for young professionals. In other words, young people who are just starting in their careers here, either at EB or Pfizer or whatever, really can't find housing. And that should be, along with the affordable housing, they sort of tie in together, except probably the income levels required for one and the other are different. Bob is a much more, much more expert on this. But I absolutely agree. I think the Groton Housing Authority has done a terrific job in town. They have resources. They really know what they're doing. And one of the things that we really regretted, those of us who were part of MOSA and tried to deal with the Mystic Oral School, we regretted that the people did not accept the Groton Housing Authority proposal, which to me was excellent. And so maybe, a mix of that kind of housing for young people and for people who have lower incomes would be really what we need in Groton, because I figured out pretty recently that we're very elitist here still. We have a lot of middle class, upper middle class and upper class families, all the mansions along the water. And then a little bit back, we have, middle and upper middle class families, but we really don't have we have very little affordable housing. We have a lot of senior housing, but we have very little affordable housing for young people. And in order to keep the young people here, we really need to build this. And this is a perfect opportunity. Town-owned property or state-owned property is a perfect opportunity to do this because it doesn't constrain a developer that much. If we offer them the land at a good price, if they can build some reasonable housing that can't be all that costly. I just think it's a great opportunity to use our property much better, a much better use than almost any other that I can think of. So Bob, I'm glad that you mentioned what you mentioned. And I'm glad you asked for a member of the Housing Authority to be on this committee. And that's pretty much all I have to say. I'm just very grateful that you all did this work. It's terrific.
Thank you, Genevieve.
I don't want to block Michael's view, so I'll go back over there.
No, I just wanted to comment on to Genevieve, Mrs. Sir. I agree. Affordable housing is definitely is a priority for me and always has been. And low income housing in particular, as it was stated, where we have a shortage of senior housing currently, affordable senior housing. And we definitely have a shortage of low income housing. That's we have low income senior housing, but not low income housing where young mothers can live with their children. And Branford Manor is a great example of that, where it's one section, that's it. And it's not dispersed evenly throughout the community, which it should be. One of the things I would like, and as I'm sitting here thinking, another note I might put in here is that housing that we speak of, I would like to see the model that's out west where they have 3 different tiers of income. You could have a top executive living in the building. You could have someone who's a low income, and you could have someone who's an affordable middle income, all living and sharing the same space and amenities. Each apartment may look differently based on, one might have granite, one might have a garbage disposal, one might have a deep soaking tub versus, but on the outside, everybody walks into the same building. And that's something that they do out west, and nobody in that building knows who's low income, who's affordable, who's the top executive advisor. They all kind of, meet. And what happens is you develop a community where everyone's interlocked together and they rely on each other. So the person who makes a little bit more might be able to help, or vice versa, or watch kids, and that's something Groton doesn't have. And one of the things I'm going to work towards after hearing this, embedding into this document, or try to, is that we change that structure. Because one of the things I heard as a person who grew up here is Branford Manor created a stigma. Everyone said, oh, you can't go there. That's low income housing. Oh, it's trouble. Oh, it's this. There was this hard pressed stigma. And no child or family should have to live in a place where anybody knows that they're low income. And that's something Groton, we can do better. And I like your example of, we got the mansions on the water, we got the upper middle class, but we have nowhere where everybody can live together. And I'd love to see that model. And maybe that's something land in our town, or something where when we go out for RFP, that we should be looking and seeking that kind of concept. Anyway, thank you for that.
Add something quickly, because you reminded me of something. I won't even sit down. I spent a lot of time in Germany because my boyfriend's German. And a few years ago, a few years ago, we had 1 million immigrants come into Germany. I'm sure you all heard about it. And everybody thought, the Germany would explode, that it would not be able to handle all these immigrants. And that it would end up like France, which has a lot of problem with its immigrant population. But within a year, the Germans had solved everything, pretty much along the lines of what Portia is talking about. And I asked my boyfriend, well, what did they do? And my boyfriend said, well, they looked at what the French were doing and they did the opposite. And what the French had been doing is segregating all the immigrants in these, more or less Branford Manor type of high rises that weren't so nice. And the Germans made a rule that they would not have more than 2 immigrant families per housing building all over Germany, so that they would distribute them with the regular population, and they wouldn't feel outcast and they would feel accepted. And it worked out absolutely beautifully, because within a year or two, this entire population was really well integrated in Germany. So Portia's idea of mixing the income levels in the same housing is really an excellent one from a societal point of view, as well as probably from an economic point of view. For a developer, they can make money off the more expensive apartments and still, be able to fund the less expensive apartments. So I'm done. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay, we don't have anyone else online. I'm not sure either one of you have anything. I know Hal, you provided a lot of information at the last meeting.
And something just kind of came up here that I'll throw in. I think I'm close enough. Is that one thing been raised about the housing and like for housing and French model, which was a disaster. Actually, the French did suburbs. We think of suburbs as where rich people went. In France, they thought of where suburbs is where poor people went. But that was both, that ended up being an economic stratification too. So it's not one thing with a modern one.
I'm French, so I can criticize.
No. But they, so I don't think we could even get to that model. Branford Manor, we know why Branford Manor happened. It happened, and the neighborhoods around it happened. It's tough to step back. Every city in big city United States ended up with an area where poor people, that's where they can afford to go. That's where we build places for them. You're right. We don't need to continue that, and we should disperse them more. You say it's a California model. It's some experiments that have been going on in California. That's not what they always do. There are vast, wealthy areas. I don't know if any of us can afford to live in the Bay Area anymore because we already live here. Too late. Now we can't afford there. Unless you already own a house there, then you're good. So it happens. Based on that, I don't know how much town planning we want to put into this document. As much as it makes so much sense to have targets and goals for these things. Maybe, I'm not sure if this is the right place for it. Maybe it is. It's town-owned property. We should have some ideas to what we want to do with it. But I don't think we want to press it that far. These aren't vast, huge acreages or monstrous areas of town. We already have those zoned. And if we want them zoned differently, then let's change the zoning to encourage certain kinds of housing. Even to the point of saying this is an area where there must be a mix of different sizes of zones. Must be a mix of different kinds of housing. That's a good thing for a zoning change. I don't know if we want to make this document, which is supposed to be just how do we divest ourselves of property, be the steering force of that, or you have two different logics going on at the same time. Want to know what we want in the town? We should look at the town planning documents and make those the documents you look at to figure out what we want to do. One of those things might be, and I'll go to another thing, I raised it last week and it was just raised again about having a master plan. If you're going to say master plan, it can't be in capitals because we don't have a master plan. That is a thing that towns often don't have. A master plan would say, here's where the future school will be. Here's where the future shopping center will be. We're not doing that. We just have the kinds of things in our zone. So you might put on there, here's where the sentence could be any future master plans as might be developed, because certain areas might come up with a master plan. And if we like the master plan that downtown Groton comes up with, that'd be great to promote it in this. But we can't point to one. We don't have one. We don't know of anybody who does. I love the idea of the flow chart. It kills me that we don't have simple flow charts. We're talking about, I think it was mentioned about when we do something, whoever the neighborhood area, it includes input from people who will be directly affected by it. We already have something or variances and whatnot. Maybe it's worth it for this being a special thing because when we're turning over a school, it used to be a school. So whatever goes there is not what it's going to be. So that's always a surprise. But you also want to get into, say, who is affected. I think we have to define, maybe you should think about it now, what that area of influence is. Because even when the oral school came in, if we said, well, everyone within a half a mile, people who were affected were miles away. Downtown Mystic was almost a mile away. It wouldn't be in the sphere of influence if I just went by a simple radius. So I think we need to get a lot more thought into who we're going to give extra input for. It could be valid, but I don't think the guys next door, obviously, they should have extra input. Guys down the road, around the corner, on the other side of town, maybe not so much. It needs to be defined. Otherwise, it's always the whole town. idea of the character statement, I've noticed that before. Have to be just very, very careful within the planning and zoning word. I think we've had to get rid of the word character because it's not definable very well, and lawsuits always win when you challenge a character. And you could say the visual character, you could say some other specific thing, but in terms of the character of the town, it's true. The character of the town might be, we want to keep it snobby rich folk down in the corner here, or whatever it is, that's the character. And no, we don't want to promote anything like that. Visual is a good one because we know we want to promote a visual character. Don't think that's exactly what we're talking about, but whatever it is, you need to define it pretty closely and make sure it's not exclusionary, which is a tough one to do. I'm going to ask a question. Do we have a list with regard to housing that kind of kicked in quite a bit? I believe Groton is better off than most towns in Connecticut with regard to what you can afford. A lot of towns are much worse off. But do we actually know what the need is? Typically, when someone comes in to build an apartment house, they look at who's going to rent these houses, who's going to buy them. If I can rent them to low income people, I'll make money doing that. I'll do that. If I can rent them to EB engineers versus EB blue collar, I'll do that. I believe the oral school project wasn't even looking for the blue collar. They were looking for the engineers and priced them accordingly. It came as a surprise to us, but that's what they were targeting. That came from normal investigation that a developer does. They don't just see what'll fit. They always do investigation way in advance to say, how am I going to sell these and who am I going to sell them to? So in one sense, the market will drive that because they will look ahead of time. They won't just make a stab at it. They're going to look ahead of time and fill it to the best of their ability. But I agree, it might need to be tempered, saying, hey, you can make the most money by putting up 3 $5 million homes. We'd rather do that rather than put in a mix. Make it look like $5 million homes, but actually have 20 units in each one and have 5 of them be one thing and 5 of them be the other thing. So I don't want to, and again, I'm not sure it belongs in this document unless you really know what it is you want to target. And maybe this isn't the place to target it. It should just be a different document that this refers to. Because this is just how to get rid of it. What the process is and who do we talk to. Not here's our grand plan for the town, in this case for housing. It's also a grand plan for everything else. That's all I got.
Thank you very much, Al. Great points.
I just wanted to say, I think also I think this document needs to combine any land agreements that we do with any private companies. So that's kind of missing as well. And I once again, been kind of figuring out how to word it. I have another sheet of stabs that I'm going to go at that I haven't really submitted yet. But we need to have something where it doesn't have to be something that we own. It can be something that we're in collaboration with. And this document should define that as such of how we work through that, come up with, the plan. One of the things I see where you're going, and I'm trying to, my head's going as well. One of the things I'm really passionate about is affordable housing, of course. And I look back, I don't know when the last time affordable housing that were not for seniors, low income, because affordable and low income are 2 different things. That's one of the things we must clarify. Affordable hits a certain medium, low income is another threshold. A person can be affordable and low income, but low income cannot be affordable. So it's a weird defining there. So it's what I seek is, and if it's not going to be in this document, I hope, I don't know when the last time we've ever built low-income housing for women and children or families in the town parameters of Groton Mystic. I haven't seen it. So I don't know that we can define it in this, but I guess, everyone has a mission statement, right? And I guess when we're looking at this, we can't tell the developer what we want, but we can kind of put our feelers out to say this is what we're looking for. And that's where I think that master plan, and that might not be the best word for it, but whatever the character or the vision of the town is. If you ask me what my character and vision would be, or my master plan, I have it all in my head, of ideas and things. I would like to see low-income housing where we wouldn't have to take children from one section of town to diversify to another side of town. If you had low-income housing just dispersed evenly throughout the town, you create your own natural diversity, and everyone should be able to live in Mystic. It should be a natural thing that we're all subsidizing all over the town. So I guess, this document could address by saying on the housing side, as Bob Frank did, we would be talking to the housing authority. We would seek, if we got 5 applications from one developer to build apartments and this one came in low income, we might as a council or in this document seek that one might move maybe higher on the list because it's a vision or a need that I surely would want to support, or that mixed income where it could be low income, affordable, and higher income. So I'm not sure where that could be, and I agree with you. These are just ideas, and maybe we can move some of this stuff onto just like a bullet point, and we can kind of pull them back as we go. But the character, I agree with you on that, changing that. But what is our plan? When we look at town-owned property, when I look at my own property that eventually I'll probably sell or rent out, as a long-term rental, but keep as an investment property, you look around and you say, well, I'm going to put a bush here, or like, you can't put the bush there because once it grows, now I want to build a shed. Like, you have a master plan that you kind of go through. And so to go through this document, we're just the first stab at it, right? Nothing has really been created. So anything's better than what we had. I see that we have to kind of know, where do we see Groton in 20 years? What are we lacking? New London just built a community center, beautiful, or they're building a community center. That was one of their vision plans. That was a master plan, or their character, or their visual concept or need. They knocked down the low income housing, the 2, big high rises. That was part of a plan. I think Groton, in order to really properly vet a developer that comes in, we have to have a vision or a plan. So when that property becomes available, we say, oh, wait, we've been waiting to build that community center. This would be perfect. Or we want a park, or we want low income housing. But if we just kind of have random properties come on the market, we don't have a plan, I feel like we kind of are acting, we're being proactive versus, we're being reactive versus proactive. And so maybe that might be something that we send an agenda item to the council or to the EDC to say, what is our plan? And maybe it's not going to be in this document. And we just refer to town's current focus or plan, because in 20 years, that plan could change. So I'm not sure. There's a lot of moving pieces, and I think this is all great input. I think this is just a great first stab at it, because we had nothing. But I do see where we could get hung up in the weeds, and I look forward to working with you guys more. So thank you for those comments. So
Well, you actually might have hit on it. Is that the first number one is to ensure alignment with the town's long-term strategic plans.
yes, yeah,
Maybe that's in capitals, and we should come up with, the town should just come up with one. That would be a moving target.
right. It should
It
be.
should just be a written out thing. Now, granted, part of it is the plan of conservation development, with zoning regulations, whatever else we've got.
Right.
And a lot of it's there, but that really doesn't have things like, and we really want to have this much more of this balance of housing, and have some things about integrated stratification of housing, things like that. That could be part of the strategic plan, and it could be in capital letters and actually be a thing.
I like that.
Start out just being a paragraph, and then go on from there.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think Portia brought up a good point about New London. And I think there's plans that would tie into this plan. And what I mean by that, when we did in New London, when we looked at the apartments and we looked at the community center, I actually developed a 10-year cash flow for New London, so they could determine, what you had to increase in property taxes, what you had to get for your mill rates, and you projected out to see if you could afford it. So I think that's another thing that we should have, a 10-year cash flow plan that goes into along with the strategic plan. So all these documents kind of surround each other in a flow chart. I've never said the flow chart before, and all kind of linked together, but it's a longer term plan for everything we're talking about, whether it's this particular committee, but also a strategic plan, a cash flow plan, and just a longer term look than the normal budget cycle, which is just annualized, and it's not looking at the 10-year plan. So great points. Appreciate it. Okay, anything
Could I
else?
speak just
Yes.
briefly, because Michael Kane, I'm on planning and zoning. But so what you were just referencing there, so we have the POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development, that the planning we put together every 10 years is mandated by the state. So that might be something that you might be interested in looking at, because a lot of this stuff, it's our goal. And it's the Planning and Zoning Commission's Bible, I would call it. You know, it's
Yeah, that's a great
not
point of view.
binding, but it's our what we use as a reference when we're making decisions.
And what was the last year that was developed?
That was supposed to have been done in 2000, and it took us about 4 years.
Yeah.
The last time, I think it was 2016.
Still do, yes.
Yeah,
Only got all have.
but that one is now, so it might be something that you might reference,
Yeah,
and
certainly.
it's a good place to, you know, it's
Parks and Recs is updating their 10-year.
Yeah,
plan
they're doing
too
that as well,
So you
yeah.
might want to coordinate.
Yeah, it seems as if you almost need the Wizard of Oz, someone who
Yeah.
can put it all
Yeah,
together.
consolidation of
Because
both.
I think a lot of this stuff that you're trying to do is been thought about, but there's no one who's really
Collaborating and putting it.
yeah, and I think that you'll find a lot of good thoughts in that document. That's all I'll say.
Okay, excellent.
Thank
for
you.
that. Thanks.
I think that's great. I mean, I think that's another part of like the beauty of this plan of trying to work together before we're not being reactive, we're being proactive. And right, there's all these little nuggets that are already around, but no one's really brought all the pieces together. And that's what I'm hoping this, whatever they decide to call this committee or this document, the POCD will be there. We'll have this, we'll have conservation, we'll have Groton Housing Authority. So I think that's wonderful, because I don't think I spent a lot of time looking at the POCD and what is our planning and zoning plan? What is, recreation plan? And I think that's great. So I really appreciate that comment about that. It's and maybe another meeting we could have that.
Might include a couple of real estate agents in there, or at least one. They're the most savvy about the local market. And they can really tell you if an idea is gonna fly or not, if they can sell it. Now, I apologize, I have to leave, but I have to go get another blood test.
Robert?
Share the EDC feedback. We're grateful to be included in the process, happy to brief, and we didn't have a chance as a group to go through all the components, but we're doing that. One of the things that sort of the conversation circled around was the logistics of dealing with respondents to RFPs. There was a discussion in there about credit reports, running a full credit report. So I'll just jotted down some of the things that we threw around on the table. There's concern about personal information. There was, in the document, you guys discuss for the criminal background that the criminal prosecution shall not disqualify a respondent, but how will the credit report data you're collecting on these respondents be evaluated? What standards is the committee looking for in a respondent? How will the personal information be secured once the outside agency provides personal information to the town? Who will have access? How's the access managed? What impact does FOIA have on the ability of the committee to protect the personal information of respondents from public disclosures? The review process mentions elected officials, commissioners, town staff, and residents of the area, which is all great but will they all have access to the personal credit reports of all respondents? If so, what's the need? So there's a lot of discussion related to that, because you don't want to inadvertently alienate marginalized communities or people who have underrepresented communities who struggle with finances, and they're also developers too, and they could be principals in some of these developments. So that was sort of the gist of a lot of the discussions that we did have already about just the logistics of this stuff. So it was handling that. Just see if there's anything else. I guess there was also trying to understand like I said, the use of the credit reports and other ways to, I guess they were assuming in the, there's a bidder's bond that someone can put up if the concern is related to the ability for someone to perform. There's completion bonds and other things. So we got into like logistics of the deal and how to answer questions that the committee would have about a developer's veracity and ability to deliver on it, but being very careful about personal information. So when you get into the credit report thing, I think we need to be careful about inadvertently alienating people or putting public information that's not necessary for the town to have, that people it can be used by other people in a way that's inappropriate or discriminatory. So that's in a nutshell, but wrapping up, we're really excited to be a part of it. We have a lot of opinions and we'll continue to go through the document. I think the work is great and I think it's very important for the town. I appreciate everybody's effort.
I appreciate those comments too, and appreciate you being involved. So, and I know some others have some events we need to attend. So any quick comments, Portia?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to respond to that. I guess, in response to that, we look at, we always say we look at precedent, we look at future, things that happen. As a town councilor, when I was asked to sign on to something, I'm signing on thinking that the backstory was done. When you show up on my doorstep as a town employee and they say, I want you to welcome Mr. Boris here, he's going to be working here. I assume they did your drug test screening and all of your vetting. I don't need to see that. I'm sure that they did that. When a new employee walks in my job and they walk in, I assume the doctor has the credentials. It's not my business how he got there. Maybe he had a neglectful usage problem back in the day. I would never know that. Now, if I Google his name, that's on me. But what's not happening is that it just was non-existent. Again, back to that non-existent. So I'm hoping that this document is going to now solidify so that we don't embarrass ourselves when we get down to the final stages. This is meant for town staff to say, we put the RFP out, here's what we got in, we did our field test on them, and here's everyone who's passed that field test. I don't need to know what's in their background. If I choose to Google the developer, I can find out all I want. What I'm hoping is when I do Google it, I'm not going to be embarrassed by who's sitting in front of me that maybe they weren't properly checked for whatever reason. So that's the intent. And I think it would be, I'm hoping it would be kept classified like it would be for an employer. Nobody knows, no one, would know that background, but it's important that it's included and as we saw moving forward. So I'm not sure how the city will we own some probably property in the city. So I'm not sure how the EDC's, your guys' master plan, or if you guys have a document, do you guys currently have a document that you guys utilize in the city?
The EDC, no, we don't.
Does the city have a document that you guys maybe can use that you guys use like this, that you guys kind of go through the vetting process, or?
EDC is appointed by the town manager.
No, I meant, do you guys work with your town staff and the city staff? Do you guys have a document that you guys have created?
No.
No.
Report to the town manager.
Yeah. So I think what my vision was is that we had a lot of developers and a lot of stuff that we were digging out after, going, oh my gosh, what is this? So this is meant to clear that up so that when that person shows up on day one, when the vetting starts to happen, the application process, that screening is done behind the scenes.
No, and it's a very good point. And I think we dealt with, looking back at the oral school and other issues, there were qualifying questions that could be asked in a checklist. And, there's processes where you can ask someone when they're submitting a proposal, have you been convicted of a crime, or certain checklists that give the automatic authority to cancel a contract based on their falsification. The issue wasn't related to that came up. Our specific questions was about running a personal credit report and then managing that data with political appointees, outside people, and what exactly, if you want to do that, what is the objective of it, and be very specific of what criteria you're looking for in that data, and be very careful that you're not discriminating by doing that, because that's, does the town really need to know?
10 minutes? Okay.
Details of that.
Right, and that's something for the town to figure out. I have to have a credit check to work on a base. It's federal, so they run my credit. No one, my employees, no one knows how much debt or no debt, or if I have any debt at all. So in the same respect, the town would handle all that behind the scenes is my hopes. So there are jobs where I have to have a credit report to step on
I
premises.
would just say, if you're gonna
Yeah.
collect, our feedback would be, if you're gonna collect personal credit reports, there should be more discussion of what evaluation criteria you're using for that data you're collecting and how you're going to make it keep it private. Otherwise, you're going to alienate, you're going to discriminate against a group of individuals who might want to bid on properties. Not everybody is a super rich developer and not every property is massive. There's a lot of opportunities for people to buy into our community, invest in our community. And we don't want to alienate underrepresented communities by having a credit report process that is unnecessarily, ham-handed. That's the feeling.
And they would, and my hope is they wouldn't be, the town would handle that behind the scenes, so it'd be classified. Just like if I went in and someone popped positive for drugs, I shouldn't know that the town would say we went with this person. I wouldn't know why they didn't get hired.
And that's great, but in the discussion, it went further, the discussion about the compilation of the report and the people that would be involved in that, and then the report being passed on to the whole body of the town council. It wasn't clear whether credit reports would be in those reports, once the information comes in, how is it vetted and put together? Like you said, if there's one individual in the town, I think it should be specified how we handle that. There could be some legal liability as well. I mean, anyway, that's the point that we all as a group sort of in our beginning discussions sort of zoned in on about needing clarity on it, but understanding that there's a very important necessity to vet the developers that come to the table and scrutinize, who they are, whether they are capable of delivering and are a good partner for the town. So
I think we hear you loud and clear. It makes a lot of sense. Appreciate that. Okay, I don't see anyone else online, and I don't think we have any more comments. So probably conclude the meeting. I want to thank you all for coming out. Appreciate your comments. Appreciate your comments online. Our next meeting, if it works. For
Did Bob, I just don't want to be rude. Did Bob Frank's hand go back up? I just want to make sure. Oh, no, just.
Hi,
Okay.
could I make one more comment?
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
Okay, so I've been watching your meetings practically back from day one. And I think you folks have a great mix of skills and great chemistry. And what I'm getting at is that adding more members, I don't believe would make you better, would make this group better. However, I am a big fan of inclusivity or inclusiveness. So certainly reach out to citizens or anyone for that matter. But I think the three of you do a great job, and more voting members wouldn't make it better. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you for those comments. I appreciate those.
And just to Bob's point really quick, every meeting we have public comment for everyone who's watching, and we run a very open dialogue. I know you came out, it's very helpful. You chimed right in, and so I want everyone to feel welcome coming out, and we open up the floor for public comment. And if someone raised their hand, we could recognize you at any meeting. So we have that right. So please come out if you have any ideas or thoughts, like at any point. It's an open, I feel it's an open door policy. I don't want to speak for everybody else.
No, I certainly want it to be open.
And please submit any written comments, because it does help, because we're trying to type this around other meetings and other things. So anything that you can send us in writing that we can copy and paste and edit in is very helpful. It helps it go faster. So.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much again.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Westervelt.
I'll second.
Second. So Bordelon, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion, meeting as adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks.